With the second season of the Charmed reboot just about to come back from its mid-season hiatus, I really wanted to take an introspective dive into what has happened so far and kind of come up with some predictions as to what we can expect. But I didn't want to do it alone. I brought on a special guest. I hope that you enjoy it. Hey everybody, welcome back to The Turnout. I am your host, Eloy, and today we're going to be discussing one of the things that has kind of taken over the channel here. We talk about Charmed, the reboot of Charmed, constantly now. It's so great. So while I've been going through and scouring the interwebs, I came across a really awesome channel by my new friend, Kristen. Kristen Maldonado. Can you tell everybody a little bit about your channel and what kind of got you into Charmed as well?
Yeah, so I make videos on like movies, TV reviews, sometimes some explainer videos, celebrity interviews, and I just love pop culture. And I'm a big fan of like shows about witchcraft and mysteries and magic, so Charmed is like a no-brainer. I started watching the original show a couple years ago, and when I found out that they were making a reboot, I was like, I'm on board, especially when I found out that it was going to be centered around some Latina witches. I'm Latina, so I was like, representation. So yeah, that's kind of how I got into Charmed.
The best thing about having Kristen here is that I have been watching your videos and I keep seeing things whenever you're talking about the episodes, because I do an episode by episode thing here too. I wait until I'm done doing mine before I go watch yours, because I don't want to just rehash what you said. But I always sit down and I record it and I go watch yours and I'm just like, oh, I missed that. Oh, I missed that too. So what I wanted to do was kind of have you on and we would kind of go through some of like the larger pieces of the season so far. I mean, we're only 8 episodes in. But even in just those 8 episodes, like so much has happened in the show.
Totally.
You know, obviously I could give my thoughts on the stuff, but you know, it's always better to have a second opinion and more than just health.
Awesome. I can't wait. Let's
Very cool. Well, I mean, I think the biggest change from season 1 to season 2, and I guess this is where we'll start. They lost their powers at the very beginning. Yeah. And it was like a super like a huge dramatic scene where, you know, Harry is like stabbed in the chest. And I was like, oh no, what's happening? You know, just from my point of view, it changes the stakes entirely for the show. What do you think about that switch from the first season where it was like every episode they were getting a brand new power and they were learning a new spell, and then it was like, oh, I snapped my fingers, bad guy's gone, to now it's like nothing?
I think it's a game changer. I think that they really, in this first episode of this new season, were like, we're just gonna blow stuff up and we're gonna change the whole game. And I really appreciate that. To see them do something just completely different, it's like, okay, like now we don't know what's going to happen. Like, where are we going next? Yeah. And I think that they took a lot of risks that some people might be like, well, that's not what Charmed is. But I think that they took some risks that just make it like, show that they're forging a new path and being like, this is what we're going to be doing now. You don't know what we're going to be doing. Do we know what we're doing? Like, you know, they're just going to go, you know, they got rid of the Book of Shadows. They don't have powers. They're in a whole new place. Their whole lives are kind of uprooted. And I mean, honestly, it's starting this show all over again, really. Yeah. And I think that they kind of had to do that with the new showrunners coming in, but also it just like, that to me is, I think, the best episode of this season so far is just them being like, we're going to throw everything out and start over. We're going to go crazy. And, you know, just to follow what's going to come next is really exciting.
Yeah, and I thought that the handling of it was also, it was pretty well done.
Yeah.
The fact too that that they lost their powers, but that Macy retained her demonic powers. I
love that.
That was a nice touch.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of there was a time when the original Charmed ones lost their powers, but Paige got to keep her white lighter power. And I'm just like, there's a little, you know, I don't know if they're real actual references and connections, but to me, I'm like, that was a nod.
That makes sense to me. I like that. That makes sense to me. I think honestly, just it also what not having powers did is it restructured almost like who these characters were, because what we had learned was who these characters were when they had power. I think there's like a famous saying, and I'm totally going to butcher it. You always know somebody's true self when they are at their most desperate. You know what I mean? So as soon as, like Mel gets, she's got all this power and she's like, I'm in charge and I'm doing everything. And in the moment that she's lost to power, she just like, I am nothing.
Yeah. It's interesting to see her go through this kind of dynamic because she's the kind of person that, she has always been in control. She's always been the one questioning other people. She's always been the one that, is not afraid to stand up. And so to see that, like, she doesn't have this ability anymore, it really kind of messes with her self-esteem. You sort of see Macy even kind of be like, well, I'm the only one with powers now, so I guess I'm the one that has to do everything. And we kind of saw her like that a little bit last season too, when she became the Source, and she was kind of like, well, it's all on me. So I think, maybe that's a little bit of the demon in Macy kind of coming out, that kind of like hot-headedness a little bit.
True, because right now I know she's half demon, but only her demon side is technically there exerting any kind of control. There is no witch, part of it anymore. And I didn't even connect that. I actually took it kind of like as, Mel and Macy were swapping roles, basically. Mel all of a sudden was feeling very small and Macy was big. But you're right, it's almost an extension of when she had the Source in her and she was just like, I'm going to fix everything. I got this. And, it makes, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense now. And the good thing is, and this is probably one of the only positive things that I'll say about Maggie, if we have this video, is that Maggie actually, when she lost her power, she said, good, I guess I'll just be a normal person. It's just like, I actually really dug that as the character who was just like, I was okay having powers and I'm okay not having powers. And it's pretty good either way.
I'm like mixed about how this season has been going for Maggie, because I feel like there's some instances where she's like, okay, I don't have powers now, but I need to contribute in some way. So like, let me get a job so I can make sure we always have access to our command center, or like, let me do this, let me do that. And I think some of the decisions that she makes in this season, Parker, are really like, not great decisions. And I think they're really kind of showing us how, as much as I thought last season, she actually helped out a lot. I thought her powers were actually, even though she has the most passive power, actually helped in a lot of situations.
Yeah.
But now I feel like she's kind of the one that they're treating her like she's the baby, like she's a little bit more, naive and immature. And she's making these decisions because she's like, well, I want to do something good. But then it doesn't pan out. I kind of feel like she went a little bit backwards.
Yes.
But
I know, I would definitely agree with that. Like I said, I like the fact, though, that she kind of stepped up and she's just like, it's cool. Like, I'll just be the normal person. I'll get a job and I'll be the one that'll just kind of be the face, here.
Now that makes me wonder, what is Macy's job going to be? Because everyone's got a job now.
Well, that's the thing is, I loved her in the first season because she was a scientist. Mm-hmm. And every problem, she approached it from a scientific point of view. And I really loved that about the character. But again, it's like as soon as, she's now without power and she's now kind of in a desperate situation, she kind of throws all the science stuff out and she's relying on like this raw power that she has. Yeah. And it is a very kind of different Macy, but also kind of just that Macy that was always inside of her as well. She doesn't have that light side, the witch side to kind of, balance her out at this point. I think as soon as they get powers, and obviously they'll get powers, we'll talk more about that in the predictions and stuff. I'm sure she'll get a little bit more even balanced, I would assume, once she starts, getting some of the witch stuff back in her. Most of the issues I had with Maggie involved Jordan. Anybody who watches my videos knows exactly it. And I made a whole other video that's going to be out soon just to talk about it more. So
tell me, what were your thoughts on Jordan?
Oh my gosh. So getting into some of the new characters, Jordan is the biggest one for me. Second biggest, I guess. I like Jordan. I like Jordan a lot. He seems like such a cool guy. He seems forgiving. He seems like he's like, yeah, I get it. He's just easygoing dude who boxes, had a hard life. I just like him so much as a person. The problem that I have with him on the show is that he's not treated like a person. He's treated like a project by the charmed ones. They're just like, oh, well, we need to figure out why he is this way. And in doing so, they're like really like invading his life and making his life horrible. What little he has really left of it.
That, but that's true. I mean, like when they went into the gym and just like started sneaking around, going through his stuff, it's like.
Well, and like Sucker punched him in that episode too. And like that whole scene was just super awkward. It was just like, I felt like somebody was going to fight in that moment. I thought he was just going to like lunge and like just start fighting with Harry, and it didn't happen. Again, that's because like that's the kind of person that Jordan is. Like Jordan is like, it's cool, man. It's we're just gonna let it pass. We're good.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't really think about it that way, but that does make a lot of sense. For me, Jordan has not been one of my favorite characters.
Okay.
But I think it's just because, sort of like you said, I didn't really think about it this way, but like they're treating him like a project. So I felt like a lot of the time when we're around Jordan, I'm just kind of like, this is awkward. Like,
yeah,
like this is just like a awkward situation that's happening, or, I'm kind of a little bit bored, or they're not really diving into him as a person more. They're just kind of telling us like, these are things about him. So I wonder if like maybe in this next half of the season, maybe now that he's been knocked out by Parker and stuff, and he's going to have to figure out like what just happened. Who are these girls? Maybe now he'll be more involved in the story in a way that like actually makes him like an active figure in it versus just like kind of being like, I'm here passively in the back. Like people are looking at up, things about my ring and,
and touching all over me. And I keep hinting, hey, stop that. But you keep doing it for some reason.
Yeah. I gotta say though, my favorite episode of his was the karaoke one. Just because
that was a great episode.
I forgot that he was on Broadway. Like, so.
Oh, is that where he's from?
Yeah, he was in Hamilton. And I'm sure other projects also, but I'm like, okay, let's do more of that, and then I'll like Jordan.
Maggie could sing because she was in Descendants, and there's singing songs all over that. And she has a good voice too. And I actually thought that their voices together meshed really well. They harmonized well. So I mean, that's neither here nor there, really.
Just letting everyone know, we would like to see more karaoke on the show.
Yes, please. I love musical episodes. Can we have a charmed musical episode? I think that would be amazing.
Would be so cool. I would love that. I feel like now though they're so focused on like this more serious storyline that they're going through that like, maybe last season when they were doing different Demon of the Week people coming in, they could have done something like that, but I don't know if I see it for this season. Maybe in season 3.
Maybe season 3. I was kind of hoping that season 2 was going to be them as kind of the witch police. Because that's what it seemed like. That's where it was going. And then it was all chaos in the first episode. So maybe after the fact, it will. Maybe season 3 will be the witch police. Because I still think that's a workable concept. You could have an extended series with that sort of concept as opposed to what we have now, which is like the situation that is currently happening in season 2 has to end at some point. Like it can't perpetually stay the way that it is right now. Mm-hmm. So, but if it's witch police, then you can totally do, Monster of the Week and stuff that way.
Yeah. That's what I kind of miss. I think I like the idea of like a long story throughout the season, but also I really miss that kind of like Demon of the Week, coming into the picture, because I feel like that just is where they can kind of expand their like powers and their sisterhood, even though there's like a whole other story that's like, the long con story that's going on.
Yeah, there hasn't been a whole lot of that. As probably there's been more callbacks to the original Charmed than there has been to earlier Charmed reboot episodes.
I think so.
It would be cool if they started writing, I think, with a little bit more intent to make this a long thing. Because they might even just be writing because they didn't know if they were going to get renewed for a third season. So they're like, we need to tie this up real quick, But now that they know that there's a third season, maybe we'll have some stuff sprinkled in there with the second half of the second season. You never know.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
I think another big character that was introduced was Abigail. And I think she's probably my favorite of the new characters. Oh my gosh, she's like a Loki kind of character. Like they were like, let's try and add Loki to the show. It's like super tricky. You know she's lying, but you have to kind of trust her at the same time.
But like, what is she doing? Like, I still don't know if I fully understand what is her plan. Like, and actually it was funny because I went to the Charmed panel at New York Comic Con last year, and I think they maybe had been filming episode 7 around the time when they were at the panel, and they were like, yeah, we're in episode 7, and like, we still don't know if we can trust Abigail. I don't know. And I was just like, is this going to be the whole season? Like, we just don't know. Is she good? Is she bad? Like, does she have... I mean, I think it would be really cool if they kind of stuck with the theme of what they had going on last season, where there's sort of like that gray area where there's like people who are doing bad things, but they think they're doing it for a good reason, sort of like charity or something. Maybe like Abigail, it'll turn out that there's like a real reason that she's, you know, scheming up to be the demon overlord. Maybe there's like an actual, you know, reason that we can be like, oh, okay, I get that, even though you shouldn't do bad things, but yeah, I get it.
Well, one thing that I was thinking was whether or not this demon overlord is really a thing. What was it that I thought I was watching? I think it was Once Upon a Time, where like there was like this wizard who was doing this magic and saying it was Ursula, and it turned out that they were just playing a trick on people. And then the actual Ursula showed up and was like, look, you need to stop using my name the way that you're doing here. And I was like, oh man. So like Abigail and Parker, like, I'm the demon overlord. And like, yeah, you know, it's just a thing that was in a book that I made up and blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, what if the real demon overlord shows up?
That's what I think is going to happen. And I think whoever it is, I mean, I'm not positive. I definitely think there's somebody. But I think whoever it is could maybe also be the master that has Dark Harry under his or her thumb. I'm not 100% sure if they're the same people, but I definitely think we're going to meet the Overlord. I just wish, though, that they would have given us a little bit more background on like who is this Overlord supposed to be. Like, you know, if they had introduced us to this myth or this prophecy. So far all we know is like, there's a demon Overlord.
Yeah,
there's a myth about it. Like, what's the myth? I don't know.
I think it was supposed to be treated like that so that we don't do this deep dive into what the thing is. I think we're supposed to regard it as just this flippant thing that Abigail says she made up, and it's just like, oh, okay, cool. Then I guess we'll just move. Oh, what? Wait, what? Like that's what they're waiting for when they really reveal it. But you know, we're too smart for that. One thing I really like about Abigail's addition to the show, though, is something that I always thought when I watched the original Charmed, and it carried over into this new Charmed, and I'm glad that somebody's actually addressing it, and it's the fact that she's like, yeah, you vanquished that demon. It's called murder. You know, it's like two demons, you are coming to our house and murdering us. And, you know, it's like, because, yeah, like it's different if it's like that kind of like, you know, bestial monster blah kind of character. But when you have characters like Abigail, who's a demon, it's just like, well, I'm going to kill you. It's just like, I can talk. I have emotions. I am a person, you know?
Yeah. I mean, and when you think about last season, like they didn't just make it like, oh, this is a demon. It was like, I'm a demon and I also run a science institute. I'm a white lighter, but I'm also an RA in a dorm room. Like they all had like dual like human magical sides.
Yeah.
So that does kind of that is a good point. I actually didn't really think about that. I really like that.
I think it took Abigail though coming and being a major character, and like I think it took her stating it out loud. You know what I mean? Because like even with the guy who was running a science institute, they're like, oh no, it's a demon, vanquish it. You know, it's like even with this person being a scientist and being, you know, even with Macy being part demon, and like, really, like you still don't see a problem with this? Like, so, and it took Abigail saying like, yeah, you're murdering us. Like, so why wouldn't we go to war? Like, oh gosh, like I thought it was a huge moment for me in the show.
Oh, okay. So what started that though? Because like to say like, oh, well, you're murdering us demons, that's why we're going to war. But why are they murdering the demons, right? There has to be like something that started that.
Right. My guess would be that it has something to do with the council, the elders. because the moment the elders are gone, that's when the demon war started. They're like, oh, these witches are defenseless. They don't have anybody like that has their back that's watching out for them. Let's just start going taking them out. This is purely speculation here. But like maybe the elders fought with the Overlord and sealed the Overlord away. And then that is what then kind of subjugated the demons. So now that the elders are gone and the Overlord is back, you know, they're feeling like, okay, maybe we can go ahead and run this thing again. You know, could be something like that. I might be borrowing a little bit from Buffy.
I mean, it's definitely an interesting idea of like where they could go with it. I just wish that they would introduce us to some of these hints a little bit more, because to me, sometimes I feel like I'm watching this season and we're just like getting like a straight storyline where they could be adding like really interesting like little hints or Easter eggs of things that then I'm going to look back and be like, oh my God, that's who that was. I can't believe that. Like, oh, I missed that part, but now I see it. Like, so far I don't feel like I'm getting things like that. Maybe we'll get into this next season. I'll be like, oh, whoa, there's this whole thing that I like totally missed. But True. I don't know. Right now, I just feel like there's times where I'm like, I wish the story would go a little bit deeper in the way that it's telling the story.
Yeah.
So that, you know, you could have like a legitimate theory, like, I mean, that is a legitimate theory, but like when I was thinking about what are my theories of the show, I was like, I don't even know where it's going. Like, I don't even know where it's going. I think with other shows, they set up things for example, the Netflix show You, there are so many Easter eggs and twists and hints and things that if you look back, you're like, oh my God, this book meant something, or this, not that they have to go that deep, but you know, just so that they're setting up something where I'm like, I have ideas of like where this could go. Because right now they've kind of blown everything up to the point where I'm like, honestly, I'm not 100% sure. Like, what is Abigail even trying to do as the demon overlord? Like, I don't really get her side, and I wanna know. Like, I want to understand.
So Abigail she's a little bit of a tricky character, right? Because this is why I compare her so much to Loki, because like literally. I think they literally just borrowed Loki from Marvel, because Loki's whole thing is that he's grown up in his brother's shadow and he wants to prove that he can rule. And Abigail is almost like that, because she's like, women aren't allowed to have power. I was only a half demon, so I was sent away. And now that my family's gone and my brother is gone, I want to show that I have power and that I deserve the Crane name. Like, I know we're looking for like a larger like reasoning, but I literally think that it's completely self-serving on her part. Like, she just wants to be ruler so that she can say she was a ruler. That's my thought on it, because she does seem like she's very, very much an opportunistic type character. But also, here's the thing about that, because I feel like the writers might be holding back information purposefully. Like, I think that they're writing it so straightforward. I think it's all from the Charmed One's point of view. And I think that's purposeful. Even in the previous season, they would cut away and it would be like a scene with Parker and his dad. Like, we don't even get that. Every scene this season involves one of the Charmed Ones or Harry. Like, so I think we really are supposed to be having a straightforward, I don't think we're supposed to know everything. Again, I think it's because they're going to be like, oh, and this is what actually happened. And I think that might be why it's so, like you said, like it feels so straightforward. It feels like it's almost leaving out so much information.
It's very possible.
Yeah, that's what. So it's possible. It's okay. I could also just be like full of crap, so it's okay.
Hey, we're speculating. We're trying to figure out this show.
That's like all I ever do. So just briefly, let's touch on the last new character, who was Kat, who I feel, I don't know, might have had potential to do something good on the show, but didn't. Do you have any thoughts about Kat?
Man, they just like, she had like no real role outside of like doing things that just basically helped the Charmed Ones on a level where it was like, I don't know. I just was like, why are you wasting this character that could be really interesting? And we find out that she actually has like medium type abilities, like she can speak to the dead, and then they're like, bye. You can have her speak to Marisol. And then go away. Like, that is the craziest thing. They did her dirty, you know? Like, it was sort of like, oh, we're going to be a character here that's sort of a love interest for Mel, but like for a second, we're going to drop this magical bomb on you and then you're gonna leave.
Yeah, I thought that possibly she was going to be almost maybe a little bit like a Nico kind of character. I thought that maybe she was going to come in and she was going to be like, I know about magic and I'm getting a magical vibe from you, and like try and see like what's magical about you and then uncover. Like, I thought that could have been an amazing like side story, is like, I'm in witness protection. You can't know that I'm a witch. And yet she just like won't stop investigating. I thought that that could have been a really cool way to kind of approach that. But instead she's like, sure, I caught you stealing magic supplies. Don't do that again. Cool. And then we don't see her for like 2 more episodes. And then the romance was, I didn't buy the romance. I just didn't. Mel didn't seem like she was interested. And I know like from a story standpoint, she was like, I just don't want to get close to anybody. It's just like, you weren't close. You were just uninterested. You just.
Yeah. I do feel like there were I just feel like they're trying to bring in some love interests in this season that feel really forced and really like just unnecessary. Like, if you're focused on, you know, a demon overlord, the witch versus demon war, an assassin dude that's after you, like also expanding the magical history, trying to be sisters, how are you supposed to fit in like these like meaningless love interests? Like, if you're gonna set up someone to become like a really important character, like, okay, we can build to that. But like, they just felt, to me, this season feels like sometimes they're adding these little side storylines that don't really do anything or add anything, or that they could have been something really cool if they did do something. Like, so like with Kat being a psychic or a medium, you know, if this was a character that we actually were invested in and she had time throughout a whole season to slowly learn, like, oh my God, I can speak to the dead, and oh my gosh, I'm going to help the charmed ones or something like that, that would have been such an interesting storyline. But instead it was like shoehorned in, like, oop, okay, bye. Yeah. I just didn't get the purpose of that.
I could even see it working with the way that they set it up, like that she's been a medium her whole life and she's been in, you know, she's been institutionalized a few times because of it. Like, that makes perfect sense. And I think also adds an extra layer to the world building of like, this is what happens when you have powers, but you don't have somebody there to train you or to, you know, give the rubber stamp and say, yes, you're not crazy. You know, like, oh yeah, you get hospitalized, you know, like, oh my gosh, like that's terrible. And that's like a terrible way to have grown up for her. But it's kind of like what you said, like, but I had zero emotional investment in her as a character for me to care about it. You know what I mean? Okay. All right. That's enough time for Kat. But speaking of like relationships, it's interesting. Like let's start off with like the relationships, because we talked about kind of where each of the sisters went like as a character individually, but it seems weird. It almost seems like without the power of 3 behind them and keeping them together, there is no power. Like they're completely going in different directions.
Yeah. I feel like, you know, season 1, we start off, these are 2-ish strangers, 2 sisters and 1 other stranger who don't know each other, you know, and throughout the season, I felt like we were seeing Maggie be that person that was sort of like the mediator, and Macy and Mel were the ones who kind of, you know, they bonded with Maggie, but they kind of butted heads a lot, which makes sense, because imagine like finding out that like you're like in your late, you know, mid-20s and you find out you have a sibling you had no idea existed. Like, you know, that would be weird.
It would be very weird.
And so to me, it's like, you know, I get that there's like you're going to need time to get to know each other. And, you know, obviously when you find out that you're witches, that's going to kind of speed things up a little bit more, at least. You know, not be perfect, but, you know, you're finding out you have magical powers and your sisters, like, you would think that would bond you a little bit more, especially as they're learning about the truth about their parents and stuff. And I thought by the end of season 1, we had this moment where Macy realized, wow, these girls will be here for me. We really are sisters. Like, you know, I thought that they had a moment. And then it feels like we started season 2 we went off to this whole new place and now we have to start over from the beginning again.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that we have to be like, we are a loving, perfect family, but I think that we should be a little bit further along. Like, it feels like we went backwards.
I would agree with that. And I think it ties into what their individual kind of, character building also was, right? Because it's like Macy, so at the end of the season, Macy's like, these girls are my sisters, and I really do, which I think feeds even more into that whole, if I'm the only one with powers, I need to do this, if not just for the other witches, but I need to protect my sisters, So I think that might be a reason why she kind of even went like a little overboard and gung-ho with it. And in Mel, of course, feeling like nothing and everything, I think that's an obvious reason why she's pushing. Like, she's just like, no, I'm too independent. I'm not going to let you take care of me. You know what I mean? I'm gonna research the book, and I'm gonna learn all this other stuff because I don't need you. And it kind of becomes that kind of push and pull kind of thing, because she's like, I'm so used to being in control that now if somebody else is in control, I hate that. I don't like that. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So I can totally understand how that might throw a wrench in it. And it's weird because it's like, because of the kind of that, I guess, almost hostile relationship between Mel and Macy, Maggie almost is just like, well, I'm going to be over here then, guys, because that's I know I was a mediator before, but I think that might even be too much for me right now.
Yeah. I mean, I actually feel like, I think what you said makes sense, but I also feel like this season to me feels like it's more focused on Macy and then Maggie doing her own whatever with Jordan. So I felt like actually Mel seemed like the character to me that like wasn't really doing that much. Like, I mean, she was doing things obviously, but like in terms of us seeing her, I felt like she was a character that like didn't have as much screen time.
Yeah.
Compared to everyone else.
I'd agree with that actually, because I think they gave all of Mel's screen time to Harry. So because it used to be the three sisters, and then Harry would get a couple scenes here and there, and
now it's like Macy and everyone's splitting the time with Harry and Abigail and then the other two.
Yeah. I guess it can be a point where there are too many characters, I guess. So I hope that you had as much fun with the first part of this conversation as I did. Come back tomorrow. We're going to have the second half of this huge conversation with me and Kristen Maldonado. And also don't forget to hit like, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell notification so you always know when the Turnout puts out a new video. Otherwise, I've been your host, Eloy. This has been the Turnout. Thanks for showing up.